Good morning. Hopefully you did well on your quiz and that you find this lesson a little bit more easy. It's not so much math involved as in matching up some parts. So hopefully today will be an easy day for you. This lesson can be found on Canvas. You can find the notes printout, you can find the video link once we go through this, or you can go to YouTube and revisit this link if you need to rewatch this lesson. This lesson is going to cover corresponding parts and congruent triangles. We'll be working on congruent triangles for the next few days. So first we need to know exactly what the definition is for congruent figures. Where in the last section we looked at equilateral, we had equal parts, congruent parts, but for today we're going to switch over to having more than just one triangle and actually saying that they are congruent. For this definition, you have two geometric figures with exactly the same shape and the same size. So everything has to be the same about them. The only thing is they do not have to be sitting in the same position. One could be laying on its side, one could be spun around, it could be reflected, as long as the shapes are same size and same shape. With this, you can say that all 6 pairs of corresponding parts, all the sides and all the angles of both shapes are going to be congruent. The main thing to take from this is that corresponding parts are congruent. So when you go through and write these down, you have to put these together in the same order so that everything is congruent. So with that said, we're going to fill in a table here at the bottom using this first example of triangle ABC and triangle EFD and see which of these parts actually are corresponding. So for the angles, I would start with any angles that are being marked the same measure, listed the same measure, or have a 90-degree angle. So obviously it's easy to see that angle C and angle D are the same. So we are going to say that C and D are going to be corresponding. The other two are a little bit harder to look at, but you can use the sides to kind of pick out which angle should match. If you notice, F to D is a lot shorter than D to E. So if I find that shorter side over here, it should show me which angles match up as well. I already have C and D together, so A is going to match with F, and B will go with E. For sides, again, I would find some that are easily marked. You might have congruent marks, or you might just have to think about the shortest side of them all compared to the longest side. If you look at these sides, A to C is the shortest side. I'm going to name that the same way F to D. If you notice, I started with an outside corner going towards the 90-degree angle. So I'm going to start with the outside corner going towards the 90 degree and get the order to be the same. Same thing about the other sides. I could do C to B, so the long side here to the long side here would be DE. And then since I have 90-degree angles, I have a hypotenuse. Side AB is my hypotenuse, so it's going to match with side FE. So here are the 3 groups of sides that would be corresponding for these 2 triangles. So let's continue naming some corresponding parts, but now instead of just having some markings, now we actually have some angle measures that could be useful. If you notice within both triangles, we have a 55 marked angle. However, we have one marked 60 in one triangle and one marked 65 in the other. At this point, we need to make sure we can find that third angle in each triangle to see if they will match up. Recall back to lesson 1 and 2 of this module, all the interior angles of a triangle sum to 180. So for my first triangle, I can do 180 minus 55 minus 60 to figure out my third angle, angle Q. So if I do my subtraction, I end up with 65. So I'll place a 65 here where angle Q is. I can do the same thing on this side. 180 minus 55 minus 65, and I should come up with 60, and that will be the measure of angle D. So now you can see all 3 angles in each set of triangles are equal. So we're going to go through and match up the corresponding parts. I'm going to start with T. If T measures 55, I can look at the second triangle and see that angle F will be the corresponding angle because both are 55 degrees. If I look at the next two angles, if I go to R being 60, then if you look in the other triangle, the angle marked 60 is D. So R and D are corresponding. Which leaves us with Q and E, and you can notice that both are marked 65, so Q and E are corresponding. Now, if you're looking at the sides, we have to pay attention to all the congruent marks. So every dash means it's a new set of congruent sides. So if you match up the dashes that are only marked once, and then the dashes that have two dashes together, and then the group of three, you'll have the corresponding sides for this triangle. If I look at the one dash and the one dash, I have R and T, which would correspond with DF. If I look at the two marks and the two marks here, I can say that TQ is corresponding to FE, which leaves us with the third side, RQ and DE. Corresponding parts again are congruent, so every congruent set of angles or congruent sets of sides would be labeled corresponding. For each set of triangles, you will have 6 corresponding sets. If you don't have 6, the triangles will not be congruent. So now, instead of just naming how they are corresponding and congruent, we're going to take their final answer and go back and make a congruency statement. So again, at this time, I would like for you to try to set up all your corresponding parts. Pause the video, try it, restart it to see if you've got everything correct. So looking at the sets of angles and sides listed, check your work to see if you've got the right corresponding parts together. If you do, it's easy to make your congruency statement at this point, because you're going to take the order of one triangle and take the same order in the second triangle. Meaning, if I look at how I've arranged my angles, A, B, and C, I can name that triangle in that order. I'm going to do the same order so angles stay corresponding. So I'm going to say it is congruent to triangle MLK. If you look in the picture or in the statement, you should be able to see that each corresponding angle is in the same location in that statement. You could also look at the pairs of letters to see if the sides are actually marked correctly. If I would take AB, if you look at your first list, AB goes with ML, you can see that that side also appears in your statement. If you don't want to have to go through all 6 of the statements, if you can look at the picture and come up with your congruency statement, that one triangle is congruent to another, you can easily figure out which 6 pieces should go together. So for this one, let's find the measures of all the missing parts of this figure. What I would suggest is to go through and find all your corresponding angles first, just by appearance. So if I look at angle A, it looks to be at a 90-degree angle. So by appearance, we're going to assume that. So angle A should go with angle J. If I look at C, C looks to be on the longer side of the triangle. So if you look at your second triangle, it appears to be between L and J being the longer side. L will be the angle that matches with C. But if you don't want to go by appearance, look at your statement. A would be with J, and like we just saw, C is going to go with L, which means B has to correspond with K. I can use that same statement and go back and find all my sides that should go together. The first two letters, A and B, should correspond with JK. So side AB and JK are corresponding. If I look at the next group, I have BC and KL. And then the last one will have to be connected from the beginning to the end. So AC would go with JL. So now that I know the parts that should go together, it's going to be a lot easier for me to find the measurements of each angle and each side. So for A and J, again, we have a 90-degree mark here. So X has to be 90. If I look at C and L, I know that Y has to equal the measure of angle C, which was 15. Which leaves me with Z being K, so Z will equal 75. So if you can easily match up the corresponding parts, you can easily find the variable measurements. So let's look at the lengths now. If I know that AB and JK are corresponding, then I know that P equals 9. Going from B to C, which is going to be our hypotenuse, and our K to L, I now see that variable N will have to equal 15. And then for AC, it would go with JL, so M equals 12. So now that we've done a couple of these together, I want you to try to look at two different pictures. It's on a handout with your packet. So if you'll find this sheet, it's kind of dark on the screen, but you can see it a lot better on your paper. Use the top two diagrams to start matching up the corresponding parts. You will connect one dot from the first column to a dot in the second column, tracing over a number and a letter between each. As you trace through the number and letter, find that number at the bottom and put that letter in the blank above it. If that confuses you, just try matching up the corresponding parts. I would pause the video. When you restart the video, you can check to see if you've got everything correct. Don't cheat. Pause the video at this point and try these. So here are your answers. Hopefully you've done well. If you've missed these, raise your hand. I will come and try to help you figure out what went wrong. If you did well, if you've got all of them right, then you can start your homework on corresponding parts. Good luck. Raise your hand if you need some help.